Welcome to the MamasteFit Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to be talking with Molly O'Brien, who is an experienced midwife with over 25 years of experience. She's also an associate university lecturer and created and currently teaches courses on biomechanics for birth for midwives and other birth-related professionals and their associates. Welcome to the MamasteFit Podcast. This is Gina, perinatal fitness trainer and birth doula.
And this is Roxanne, labor and delivery nurse and student midwife.
And this is the MamasteFit Podcast, where we empower you on your prenatal fitness, birth, and postpartum return to fitness journey.
Our podcast shares how to move throughout your pregnancy to stay strong and comfortable. Pain is not a requirement of pregnancy. Understand the science of birth and how to approach recovery after birth.
We share our personal experiences as mothers navigating the stage of lives, plus our professional expertise as birth workers and fitness professionals.
Our goal is to help you feel confident as you navigate the perinatal timeframe for an empowering pregnancy, positive birth, and postpartum journey.
We are glad to have you with us on this journey and that you've chosen us to support you. I stumbled across Molly's Instagram page a few years ago, the Biomechanics of Birth. I was really drawn to the type of information that she was sharing because it seemed very similar to the type of information that I was also sharing. And so it was really cool to see how somebody else on another side of the world was making the same type of conclusions about information and cues that they were seeing during birth as a midwife. And so I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation all about how the pelvis does move and how it opens, how you can optimize that during your pregnancy, and all about how we can improve our care as birth professionals. So welcome to the MamasteFit Podcast. Today we have midwife Molly O'Brien, who teaches the Biomechanics of Birth course. So thank you for being here, Molly.
Oh, thanks for asking me, Gina. I'm delighted.
So the Biomechanics of Birth does feel like a newer understanding in the birth world. I would say probably within the past decade, more so probably with like the introduction of spinning babies, really introducing how the pelvis moves. And I think that was my introduction to the biomechanics of how the pelvis actually can move in relation to birth. And so when I took a spinning babies course, I was like, oh yeah, this makes total sense. Like why wasn't this taught to me in my doula course? But I'm not a medical provider. And so how were you introduced to the biomechanics of birth?
Well, I was introduced. I also know Gail's work, which is wonderful. But I was actually, I think I started my journey very similar time to Gail's. My first baby, 44 years ago, he was back to back, and I had a very difficult time to push him out, despite my philosophy being completely trusting in the process. I had a very difficult time. And then I had really good, easy births. My third birth, painless. And I wanted to know, why was that? So my journey started there and inside my head. What was going on that made these different for the same person? I was a nurse, but not a midwife. And I became a midwife after my children were born. And I started that exploration and continued it in my work and training and work as a midwife. I attended Jean Sutton's optimal fetal positioning workshops back in 1999, I think. So that was kind of introducing me into the pelvis and movement and making space for the baby. And I delved very deeply in my work as a midwife. And because everybody knew I was interested, they directed me to all the difficult labours, which was hard. I have to say, it's a really difficult situation. But I did learn a lot by attending those kind of births, and also learn a lot by attending births that were undisturbed physiological births. So you could see the unfolding of the different patterns of labour. And oh my goodness, I'm absolute nerd for physiology, but also to delve very deeply into the detail. And I think that helped me understand better what was going on.
That was something that was similar for me. So I'm a doula. I'm not a medical provider in any way, but just watching people labor was a really big way for me to learn all these like subtle clues and how movement can really interact with where somebody was in labor. And I gained that from the opportunity of like watching somebody labor for however long, both physiologic, like fairly undisturbed births, and then also births that were a little bit more challenging. And so watching those subtle cues and kind of beginning to correlate, well, this movement pattern means this, was really cool. And I'm shocked that I'm not shocked, but I wish there was like studies that looked at, okay, when we're seeing this movement pattern repeatedly, it could mean this, which is not an issue, or it could mean this, which is an issue. So let's take steps now, because it's really hard when there is an issue in labor and we don't recognize it until somebody's been pushing for 4 hours. And then it's like, well, what are we going to do now? Like,
absolutely agree. Oh my goodness. And I think that's a really key area. And it's certainly something I focus on in my Biomechanics for Birth course, is the ability to recognize when the birth process has gone awry due to a biomechanical issue or a mechanical issue. But it's really, and this is where I love my work as a midwife, and I think midwives are awesome because, and doulas too, obviously, anyone who helps women give birth, that's a good job to have. But our work is, gosh, I'm going to put it like this. I was teaching those Californian midwife, and she said, Molly, we've got to bring out our Nancy Drew. You probably know who Nancy Drew is, do you?
I do.
So I did. And she said she's a TV sleuth or a book, in a book, storybook. And she's so right. We've got to be detectives and we've got to work out, because fear very commonly accompanies a mechanical issue. And we have to work out, is she frightened? And that's the sole issue, and we can help her and assist her with that, reducing the fear and anxiety perhaps, or has she got something else going on here that we need to understand better so that we can assist and guide her better. And of course the key issue here is the pain, I think, and where the pain lies, and also if the process is becoming really difficult to push your baby out. 4 hours to push the baby out, that really, why should it take that long? Of course, then we've got accompanying variables there. We've got the environment and the position women are giving birth in. So a lot might be iatrogenic. So because of medicalization, it's bringing on these difficulties. Nevertheless, the solution is the same. Movement, move, change position. You'll be able to cope better with it. You'll be able to make more space for the baby that way. But recognizing it early so women are not suffering, I think, is a really important aspect of the work that I'm doing and teaching.
Was pelvic mechanics a part of your training as a midwife? Because we get this a lot where folks are like, why doesn't my doctor know this? Why do you think that is?
Oh, I've got a very strong opinions on this and views. I'm actually furious, Gina. And it's come from the fact that midwifery training, and I think it'll be the same in the USA, and certainly it is so in Europe and the UK, it is actually founded in pathology.
Yeah.
Really, it should be founded in salutogenesis, which is the promotion of health. That's where we are as midwives. We're really public health practitioners, and we are promoting health, supporting, maintaining health. That's our work. And yet, midwifery, if you look historically, go back to the 17th century, where the barber surgeons came in, the male midwives who then became obstetricians, had their tools, their forceps, their measurements, quantifying the pelvis, pathologizing the pelvis. And once you start pathologizing the pelvis at that time, then midwifery became pathologized along with it. The training that came after was rooted in that pathology. So when we learn about the pelvic floor in our training, it is mainly about cutting, episiotomy, tears, suturing, prolapse. You see where I'm going with that? So that's pathology, rather than how can we understand better to keep the integrity of the pelvic floor healthy and whole, and the whole person who's got that pelvic floor and that pelvis as a holistic practice to look after that whole person. Even though I and you too and others are separating, in a sense, the biomechanical element from that whole person. We've not forgotten that there's a whole person there, and we have neurohormonal interactions. We have, psychosocial influences. That's a whole person. But the fact is we've neglected the biomechanical element, that we have to bring that out now and have a good look at it with new perspective and new information. Can I just say one more thing about that, Gina? What we're actually teaching right now in medical school, in midwifery training, we are using outdated information that comes from 1930s, nearly 100 years old. The Caldwell-Malloy classification that has 4 pelvic shapes. Gynecoid, and it's the only model that you can buy, is a gynecoid. The anthropoid, platypoloid, and android, and there has been studies to say basically that is so outdated, it's very misleading, very unhelpful, and not true that the best and normal pelvis is gynecoid, and it's causing many problems in maternity care.
I can completely agree with that. The number of clients that I've had that have been like, my provider told me my pelvis was really narrow, or we'll be in the middle of labor and a provider will be like, this prominence is very steep, or they'll just, your sacrum is very prominent or something. They'll say something where it's like,
yeah.
Nobody knows what that anatomical term is. It's not common language. And nobody understands what you're saying to them. Like, you're telling them information about their pelvis with kind of this, it's too small vibe, but you're not giving them any information on what to do about it. Like, you're just like, well, baby's probably not going to come out because you have a really narrow pubic arch. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, what are they supposed to do with that information other than be scared now?
I find it astonishing that we're using this outdated information and we're still teaching the mechanisms of labour that go with the gynecoid specifically. And yet so few of us have a gynecoid, a purely gynecoid-shaped pelvis. Very, very few of us have that. It's also racially implicated because it was thought that most of the white Caucasian women would have a gynecoid pelvis, and therefore that was the best one, the normal pelvis, which means that we're pathologizing anybody else who doesn't have that shape of pelvis. But it's fraught with inaccuracy here as well, because who the heck knows what kind of pelvis you've got? And this is coming again from the pathological view of measuring. The obstetric conjugate is still taught. How can you measure a mobile structure? So you're doing a static measurement on one shape that most women probably don't have. And you've measured it in centimetres. Like, 12.5 centimetres or 11.75 centimetres. Of what the heck? And this is why our training needs to change, because this is the biomedical model and the pathology that's coming in here to quantify our bodies as women. To measure our pelvises in this way is completely inappropriate and wrong, because we all have different shapes. We need to move away from that. And that's what I do. And I don't care what shape of pelvis you have. What I do care about is the quality of experience that you have.
Absolutely.
How are you doing? Is it unfolding okay for you? Are you suffering? How is it feeling? And that's much more interesting and pertinent. And then if there's an issue, well, would you like to make more space for your baby?
So that's something that I'll sometimes see from like wonderful nurses or midwives that have taken a spinning babies course. I took it last weekend. They're really excited about all of the things that they've learned. And I'm like, this is wonderful. Like, you have a better understanding of pelvic mechanics, but you don't need to do every single movement that you just learned on every single person that you meet. Like, they're not magic. Like, they're magic moves, but they're not magic moves. And knowing when to apply those moves and when to interrupt somebody's labor is more important than giving them all of these moves. And so that's something that I'll see where someone has been enlightened and they're like, oh my God, I have to do all of these movements that I just learned. And I'm like, you're interrupting this person's labor by throwing them in the side-lying release. Like, they don't need the side-lying release right now. They're not showing us that there's any issues in their labor.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
So that's always like a funny thing that I'll notice is I'm like, I'm glad that you're learning, but let's learn a little bit. Let's dive a little bit deeper to where we know that the pelvis moves. We know that it's dynamic.
Yeah.
We know that movement helps to facilitate the creation of space within the pelvis, and that the birther is going to intuitively create that space for themselves for whatever pelvis they have. Like, they're going to move to create that space intuitively.
Yeah.
And then if they get stuck, or let's say baby got stuck or something's going on where they need a little bit more support, we're going to know because they're going to change their temperament. They're going to let us know they need some help. Like, something doesn't feel right. Like, something's off. And instead of being like, no, it's fine, that's when we can start to figure out, okay, where is baby? How can we help? That's when we apply the moves, not when they're laboring, nothing's fine.
Absolutely.
Hey, I learned this new movement. It's called the side-lying release. Let's get in it. Like, it's wonderful, but
because what you're doing then is perpetuating.
Let's apply it to the situation.
Exactly, because otherwise you're perpetuating the existing narrative of we were just going to interfere anyway. We're just going to interrupt and interfere because we have this knowledge and we want to use it, rather than actually changing this narrative, which is changing the conversation in childbirth. Because I think we can use biomechanics and the successes that we get from helping women to make more space for their babies. We can then flip this narrative on its head and say, look, it's this physiology, it works. Women can give birth if they're given the right environment, the right support and tools when things have gone awry. And of course, actually, antenatal preparation is very important for that too, to movement and make sure that you're in an optimal health to give birth to your baby. That's what really aiming for, isn't it?
Absolutely. Let's take a break from this week's episode to talk about how you could optimize your nutrition during pregnancy with Needed. So during my pregnancy, I was doing a lot of movements to help to support my preparation for birth. So I was moving my body in a way to ensure that I could open each pelvic level. In a way that I was helping to enhance my recovery after these workouts was I was taking Needed's collagen. So our protein needs during pregnancy do increase, and collagen is a helpful way to increase your protein intake. And it was something that was super helpful for me. It was really easy to add to my morning coffees, to my smoothies, even to like my orange juices. And so it was easy for me to take it throughout the day, especially after my workouts. Needed is very intentional about their formulation of their supplements and where they source their ingredients, so I trust that they are creating the best products to support me throughout my pregnancy and my postpartum experience and throughout my entire perinatal journey, and I trust that they can support you as well. If you're interested in checking out Needed, head to thisisneeded.com and use code MamasteFit to get 20% off your first order or first 3 months of subscription. So there is definitely a lot of prenatal preparation that someone can do, because we don't want to wait till labor to realize that
exactly
a movement pattern that's necessary is inaccessible. Like, that's kind of too late, or not too late. You could probably overcome it, but it's much easier if we have 9 months of pregnancy to work on different types of movement patterns. And so each level of the pelvis opens with different movements. Like, research supports that the type of movements that we tend to exaggerate during pregnancy are going to be external rotation at the hips, or those wide knee or toes out type positions. And then also more of that anterior pelvic tilt, or increasing an arch in our back, or the two movement patterns that become more predominant during pregnancy. And so if we can only really favor these two movement patterns when we have to do the opposite to create different types of space in our pelvis, this can be more problematic for us during pregnancy. And so during pregnancy, we can try to focus on these different types of movement patterns, like internal rotation, asymmetrical type movement patterns, and also that posterior pelvic tilt, so tucking the butt underneath. Those sometimes tend to be a little bit more problematic during pregnancy. And so focusing on them during pregnancy can potentially make labor a little bit easier. And so a trend that me and some of my physical therapist friends have noticed is for our clients or their patients that have a really, really hard time finding back expansion. So tucking their butt underneath, they tend to have more problems during labor because they can't create space in that posterior outlet of their pelvis. So they can't create space in the bottom part of their pelvis.
Absolutely.
And so I don't know if that's also a trend that you've noticed as a midwife.
Well, it's something I understand through my studies that basically if you sit a lot and you slouch, then that's more likely to happen, isn't it? That posterior pelvic tilt where you're, because of your posture, and I think you've been talking about that, your posture generally. For me, I mean, you're coming from a slightly different angle than I am. I'm still talking about biomechanics for births. I'm talking about movement and making space and using techniques, biomechanical techniques. But my emphasis is on general movement because, quite frankly, a sedentary lifestyle is a big problem. The sitting is the new smoking, as we know. And we've got fascia that gets sticky as we sit. If we sit a lot, our calf muscles shorten. That's going to have an impact on our pelvis. Our psoas muscle is also implicated negatively when we're sitting too much. Then, as you've just been talking about, posterior pelvic tilts that are opening the top but closing off the bottom a little bit more. That is more likely to happen if you slouch a lot when you're sitting, habitually doing that. And I think where I aim for in the kind of program that I have is certainly using some of the like a forward-leaning inversion, a bit of abdominal shifting with a rebozo or scarf, which is really helpful. But general movement, walk, dance, move your body, connect with your body. Because one of the things I love, Gina, is that women can actually learn how to reconnect with their body, because I think we've lost that actually in our modern lifestyles. We've lost that connection. It's also been drummed out of us in our education. Women can't do this. Look at the media. This is, a dangerous thing to give birth and it's full of risk and we've got fear. And we don't have that understanding that if we connected to our body and moved instinctively, we could probably open up the space without anybody else saying anything. And I would love that to happen. To move instinctively requires two things: trust and confidence in your ability to give birth. And that has been lost. And I would love to build, I think that's where antenatal educators come in, or even back into schools to let the children know how their bodies work and to look after them.
Yeah. So that's a trend that I've kind of noticed even during my own pregnancy, where it feels like there's a lot of like hand holding that happens once you like find out that you're pregnant. Like you need somebody else to give you permission to even eat certain things, to move your body.
Yes.
When to go to the hospital. Like you need somebody else to tell you all of these things that you may or may not intuitively know. Or maybe it's been so suppressed for so long that you're like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't feel confident that I know anymore. And then we're shocked when people make it to labor and they're like, well, I don't know if this is the right movement. Tell me the right movement to do. Because I'll have clients like that are like, tell me the perfect position to be in right now. And I'm like, it's the one that you're going to feel is the best one for you. And I'm going to help enhance it.
Exactly. And I think you made some very good points there, because while we want to, I want to certainly, and I know a lot more midwives and people like yourself who are aiming to pass that power back to the women. Because right now that power imbalance is there because the birth professional knows more than she knows, which is completely untrue. Because she is the one that has the baby inside her body, passing through her pelvis. And that is vital information. First of all, we're not listening to her. We need to start to listen. And that will be part of the shifting. That once women are listened to, and that's what they complain about most of all, nobody listened to me. Once they say this doesn't feel right, pay attention. Pay attention, because she's telling you something here. Ask her, how's that feeling? Value her knowledge about her own body. And that will be part of the way, but it won't happen quickly. We have an awful lot of unraveling to do. Some of these women will require a little, like you say, hand-holding and guidance, but that's fine. But always, if we can frame it in a way that supports them to have more power inside themselves, to believe in their power, to believe and trust in themselves, and to leave that birth feeling, oh my goodness, I did that. It's about communication. It's about how we frame things. It's very important. And I actually love all that side of things because I think it's a real skill to learn, needs to be passed on to how do we do that? We don't want to take over these women. Just want to relate back to something you said earlier, Gina. When midwives and doulas and others hear about the moves, they want to use them. Now, Kiko, knees in, calves out. I don't go on Instagram a lot, but I see that a lot. And when I'm teaching about the open your legs scenario that a lot of midwives still say, open your legs, make more space. And I illustrate how that doesn't do what it says, that it actually does the opposite. It reduces the transverse diameter of the pelvic outlet. I see lots of the midwives then showing each other, oh, look, this is what you do. You do internal rotation of the femur, which is Kiko, knees in, calves out. And I say, hang on a minute, that is true, that will increase the transverse diameter of the outlet, and it's good to know that. But please do not replace that instruction of open your legs wide with Kiko. Just stop instructing. Just stop doing it. Stop thinking you know more than she knows about her own body unless she requires that guidance.
Yes. Like, we as birth professionals have a lot of experience with birth, like in whichever role that we take apart the birth team. So we have a lot of like overall knowledge that we can bring to the table, but we don't know more than the person that is giving birth. Like they are living it. They have this connection to the experience that we could never replicate.
Yeah.
And the more that we empower the person giving birth to know, like, hey, you have all the answers to this test. We're here to enhance your experience and to support you, like, by giving you the information that you want, that you need. But I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm not going to demonstrate to you how important I am as a part of your team. And this is something that I tell all my doula clients. I'm like,
exactly.
I don't need to prove to you that I'm a good doula, or that I know what I'm talking about, or that the amount of money that you paid me to be here is worth it. Because I know, like, for myself, that I am good at this job.
Yes.
And I don't need to prove it to you by interrupting your labor. Like, if there's an issue, I'm going to help you out. And I've had clients that, like, their labors were super smooth.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think I did anything. And they're like, no, just knowing that you were there gave us the confidence to do what we did. Just knowing that if we had an issue that you could give us an answer gave us the confidence to do what we needed to do. And I'm like, that's how all birth professionals should be, is like, we're here to keep you safe. We're here to give you the tips that you need, but you got this. You're the one that's doing this and you're amazing. Like,
exactly.
As opposed to like belittling them or making them feel like you could never do this without us. People give birth on accident all the time by themselves. Like, I don't recommend it, like, on purpose, but like,
absolutely.
Like, it's really important. And I think it really makes a big difference when we enter motherhood or we enter parenthood, when we felt like I was the person that got to make all the decisions during my pregnancy. I got to have conversations with my provider about my care, and they helped me kind of debunk things that I was seeing on Instagram, but then they also were open to conversing with the things that were important to me as an individual. And then during my labor, I got to move and labor. And if I wanted to get epidural, I got an epidural. If I didn't, I felt supported in either path that I took. Like, and I birthed my baby.
Yes.
And then, like, you take that confidence and you push it over into motherhood or into parenthood, like, that's going to change the next generation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, when women are able to give birth and they're like, I am amazing, like, that's going to make a huge difference in our confidence as mothers.
And they are amazing.
They are
amazing. They're wonderful. And so are the birth workers, if they can just remember why they're there, and they're there to serve the women. And we have this narrative that we're there to sort it out. Again, it's coming from this, and this is about a model. I'm not talking about individuals, because I think obstetricians are amazing, by the way. I love the skills. I'm grateful for intervention when we need it. But the model of care is such that we know better than you. And when you work in that model of care, it's very easy to slip into that mindset. And that's why it's dangerous for midwives to be working so much in that dominant model, biomedical technocratic models. It relies on technology. It relies on measurements. quantifying everything and that we know more than you know, that's a dangerous situation. And we can see the result because look at stats.
Absolutely.
Look at the trauma. Look at the cesareans. So we have a lot of work to do, and I'm really grateful that you're doing what you do. I'm doing what I do. Gail Tully's doing what she does, and all the other people who are also doing that. Looking at this area that has not been looked at. It's called labour dystocia, difficult birth. That's what directly translated from the Greek. It means difficult birth. And most of it is mechanically related. We don't even have a consensus on the definition. If we can't define it, then we can't really study it. And that's been a problem. So it's slowly but surely coming out. And I'm actually part of an international network of researchers to push that forward. It's called In Birth, and it's global. And we're looking and bringing studies in to have a look at the mechanical element of birth and how can we help women to have a better birth experience. I think that's really important that we start to build that body of knowledge that's been so lacking.
Absolutely. All of the research that I have on pelvic mechanics come from not birth. Like, there aren't really that many about...
You got it.
And I always feel really bad.
It's not in maternity care.
People always ask me, like, what study supports this movement pattern that you're saying? And I'm like, well, not one that's talking about birth. Like, it's pelvic mechanics. I understand. Like, it's like...
But we have got some, to be fair. We have got some.
It's like I got it from my textbooks.
Yeah, there are some. Yeah.
There are some. There are a lot on pregnancy changes. So, like, how does your posture change during pregnancy generally? How does your balance change during pregnancy?
Yeah.
And so understanding that, you can then correlate to, okay, well, if we're going in this direction with our movement patterns during pregnancy, the opposite are probably going to be more challenging for us to find. And that's the trend I see with my clients, with my fitness clients.
Exactly.
And then I definitely agree, just moving your body in general during your pregnancy is so beneficial. Like, just however that is for you. Obviously, I'm a big advocate for strength training during pregnancy, but I don't push like lifting weights on everybody because that's not everybody's joy. Like, not everybody likes to lift weights. Just going for walks during your pregnancy is wonderful.
And that's great. And actually to make it achievable.
Anything that helps to move your body.
So for those who love doing much more intense fitness, like the kind of stuff that you're teaching as well, I don't know, you teach different things, but there'll be others who just don't move at all, who don't go for a walk. We don't want anybody to feel guilty. We want them we want to make it achievable. So go for a walk and follow up. How you've been, if you see them again for another appointment, you say, how are you doing? Did you go for a walk? Have you been for a walk recently? Have you been dancing in the kitchen? Have you put your funky music on and moved your pelvis? Did that feel good for you? How was that for you? Make it fun. And so women actually are more inclined to do it rather than it being seen as hard work. Especially if you don't move very much, then that's a challenge, isn't it? So make it achievable. I've actually got a 6-minute sequence that I put together, which I gleaned from those other places, as you were talking about, from physiotherapy, from yoga, from the fitness world, and fascia. And it's a ball rolling underneath the sole of the foot, which I do, in which my physiotherapist gave me that instruction to help my back. And I thought, well, that might help the women. It's going to release that fascia. So 1 minute on each sole of the foot, then a calf stretch, 1 minute each calf. Very good if you're a sedentary, if you sit a lot and you're working in an office or whatever. Every day you do that. And then a pendulum swing for the psoas muscle. And this is very easy to do. You could put the kettle on and have a ball rolling underneath your foot. You could have it underneath the desk. You could be pressing on that and releasing that. So these are little things, but it actually shifts something, I think, in the brain. And also you can physically feel the difference when you do those small movements. And I'm a great advocate for that, as I'm being a bit of a stiffy and I'm not a great mover myself, although I do love to dance.
I definitely find that when we release the tension that's kind of keeping us in certain positions, it makes it much easier to move our bodies in the different range of motions with the different hip positions to then create that space within the pelvis.
Yes.
So we have a similar, I think everybody has their own circuit, where they're like, these are the movements that I find to be really important.
Exactly.
We have our own little circuit as well that really emphasizes that internal rotation and posterior pelvic tilts, which are two movements that are harder to find during pregnancy.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. They're releasing the tension to then make it easier for you to move your body however feels good, as opposed to feeling very stuck in like a specific position.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you think we could integrate this more into the medical model so that people can stop commenting on my posts? Why doesn't my doctor or nurse know this information? It's like, well, it's not a part of their training.
We have to share. I mean, I share, when I teach, I always share, I have a discussion about the pelvis and the shapes. And I link into a couple of researchers. One is from 2015. I think it's called Pelvic Shapes, Distinct Types or a Nebulous Cloud. And that was really good at debunking the Caldwell-Malloy classification that is currently taught. And that's a really good paper to be passing around and talking about. And the other person is Leah Betty, who's an evolutionary anthropologist. And she's looking at the pelvis through the ages, through evolution and childbirth difficulties. And it's really fascinating. It's geographically and climatically, if that's the right word to use, indicated. I mean, the woman who lives in the Arctic, Eskimo, who is dealing with the freezing cold, is a very different shape to the Somalian woman dealing with extreme heat. And so her pelvis is shaped differently. Both of them have different shaped pelvises. But we don't stop there because we move. So we mix populations. And we eat different food now. So while we started off perhaps a Somalian having more of an anthropoid type pelvis, which will equally accommodate a baby back to back or to the front, and they may even favour back to back actually, the chances are now that the populations have mixed and there are slight changes there. And that's what Kuliak has found. We have a little bit of gynecoid and a little bit of anthropoid and a little bit of something else. By the way, the android pelvis was not found, by the way, in any of the women because it's a male-shaped pelvis. And in the thousands and thousands of women who were studied, there was no android pelvis.
Yeah.
Which is quite startling that we're told there is. But that study said, no, there isn't. You know, so, and you might be told that, oh, you've got male-shaped pelvis, you have difficulty. No, stop that. Stop talking bullshit. So I'm actually talking to universities about putting this into the curriculum. And I teach in universities as an associate lecturer. I teach mainly in the NHS, and the NHS has embraced this. I am booked up till next year, and I have loads and loads of inquiries to come and teach in hospital trusts because we want to know about this. So I feel that there's a movement going on there. You are followed by hundreds of thousands of people. And you have a great platform to put that forward and say, look, we've got these studies. It's saying we don't have 4 shapes. That was misleading. And it's still being taught. We need to stop talking about that. Can I just also mention that if you have an anthropoid type pelvis, more of an anthropoid, for those Black African women who are more prone to having that type of pelvis, their babies might not do a rotation. Their labour pattern, this is going back to at the beginning of our conversation, Gina, their labour pattern would be quite different from a woman who had some more gynecoid in her pelvis because the mechanism of labour will be different. So where Leah Betty suggests that this has got real implications for Black women giving birth who have that shape of pelvis because their labour pattern will be such that they may carry their babies back to back more commonly, which is perfectly normal for them. And they also carry their babies high in their pelvis. And the pattern of labour is such that most of the opening stage of labour, that first stage of labour, is the baby entering the brim and the upper part of the pelvis, and that takes quite a time. And as soon as it meets the pelvic floor, they go straight into pushing their baby out very quickly. And it's a different pattern. It's equally valid as anybody else's pattern, but it's different, and we have to acknowledge the differences and honour and respect differences in the ways that we labour and birth our babies because of those different shapes and different mechanisms. So I'm pulling away from how is your baby situated, because I don't know what shape pelvis you have. Back to back might be completely normal for you, But if you are actually expressing difficulty in your movement and in what you say and where you're feeling the pain and so forth, then I might suspect that back-to-back isn't suitable for your pelvis, like it wasn't suitable for my pelvis. And I had difficulty. But I'm not going to jump in and start judging anyone who is carrying their baby back-to-back or is taking a longer time for that baby to come through, because maybe they have that kind of shaped pelvis. But I want to know, how is this unfolding for them? What do they think is happening? Let's talk and value their embodied knowledge.
Absolutely. I will say that all of the different pelvic types, from my understanding, all open, and the same type of movement patterns are still going to create the same type of opening in each of the pelvic levels.
Yeah.
But baby's rotation and movement through the pelvis might be different to accommodate whatever the shape of that pelvis is.
Yeah.
And so I really also try to move away from, this is the perfect position for your baby, because one, baby rotates and changes their position as they move through the pelvis. And so there's not just one perfect position.
Yes.
But also baby's smart. They're going to kind of wiggle and rock their way through the pelvis to figure out the best space for them. And that might look different. And so I'm always excited for somebody when they tell me, oh, my provider told me that my baby's in the perfect position. They're OA or they're LOA. And I'm like, if that brings you confidence, that's amazing. But then what happens is they feel their belly and they're like, oh my God, my baby's on the right side. Or my provider told me my baby's OP. And then they're panicking the rest of their pregnancy, like, oh my God, like my baby's position, I need to fix my baby's position. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to force it.
Absolutely.
Your baby's smart.
That's it. You know, we need to change that narrative. It is very unhelpful and it causes stress and anxiety. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
And that's the work that I see I'm doing and learning as I go. You know, I'm learning more. I'm a nerd. Look, I have got tons of papers. I mean, I've got tons of printed out papers because I don't want to sit in front of the screen all the time.
Same.
If my husband had to see all the tabs that I've got open, I hide them and open another window and then it's full of more tabs. But I'm fascinated by it and I will keep on learning about it because it is something that we need to know more about and we don't know enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we work with the women.
It sounds like, in summary, move your body. You know what your baby needs to do.
Move your body. Yes, dance, move your body. Exactly. Start to tune in. Believe that, you know, you have got the space. And if you feel that you haven't, then make the space by just lifting your leg up a little bit, moving your body, moving your pelvis, but learn more. Have some preparation too and learn more, just like we're all learning. And come and we'll all learn together about our bodies because we've been misled that we have faulty bodies. And we need to correct that.
Absolutely. Your pelvis is definitely not too narrow. So Molly, how could people learn more from you? If they wanted to take your courses, if they wanted to follow you on Instagram, how could folks learn more from you?
Oh, and I'm sorry to say that I am not big on Instagram, as in I don't go there very much. I'm not very au fait with it. But I have a course for birth workers, which is Biomechanics for birth. And I'm trying right now, because it does entail either me sitting in front of the computer for 8 hours. They also get pre-recorded material and I sit in front of the computer with them, which is far too long. And we're talking about movement and then we're sitting for 8 hours. It's ridiculous. Or I go and I do it live, but as I say, most of my work's in the NHS. I do private groups as well. But I'm rolling it out and I'm trying to put the modules on. I'm creating bite-sized chunks of topics, like the pelvis, like we just talked about, and then doing a module on that. And at the minute, that's what I'm trying to do, is put that online so it can sit online, do webinars, talk about the stuff that we've just talked about and more, and then do practical workshops or do them online. So I'm in the middle of developing that. But at the same time, I've also got, because of course the women are central in this. This is why we're here. This is why we're doing it. It's for them to have the best possible experience that they can have. And so I've got a Moving for an Easier Births class that is tells the women, here's your pelvis. This is what it does. It opens, it moves. You've got muscles running through it. You've got connective tissue. You've got all this, give them a little bit of that information about how and what they can do to help themselves. So that's just on my learning management system called Learn Worlds. And I'll be training birth workers, birth preparation teachers to teach this. The women can have it to look at and then have somebody go through it with them and teach them the moves, hopefully face to face. So that's all on the cards. But my website is called optimalbirths.co.uk. And on Instagram, it's Biomechanics for Births. And I will try and put a little bit more on there. I'm not great. I am on Twitter at Molly the Midwife. And I'm also have a Facebook group. So if you're a birth worker, you're very welcome to join the Facebook group, which is Biomechanics for Births. And there's over 5,000 birth professionals on there. And we've got obstetricians, physios, doulas, student midwives, birth preparation teachers from all over the globe. And we talk about lots of things there and share information and research and studies and share stories.
Thank you so much, Molly, for being on the MamasteFit Podcast. We'll be sure to link your information in the show notes so folks that want to connect with you can. So thanks again for being on the podcast with us.
Thank you, Gina. Been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us today and listening to this episode. If you want more support throughout your pregnancy, join our prenatal fitness programs and childbirth education course. If you need more support after birth, join our postpartum fitness programs and education courses. If you're a professional, we offer birth worker and fitness trainer courses so you can learn from us and earn CEUs. You can explore all of our courses on our website at MamasteFit.com, and you can use code STORY10 to save 10% off all of our programs. On our website, we now have a quiz that you can take to figure out which program is best for you depending on your workout preferences and what phase of life you're in. If you enjoy this episode, please follow our podcast to be notified when we release new episodes, leave a review, and share with your friends. We release new episodes every Wednesday and new birth stories every Friday. This podcast is sponsored by Need It, a nutrition company focused on optimal nourishment for your perinatal journey. Use code MamastePod for 20% off your first Needed order.